6 years after my sister stole my millionaire fiancé, she flaunted him at our mother's funeral with a diamond ring, until I introduced my own husband and watched her face turn white, when she realized the truth was about to shatter her perfect illusion. The funeral entrance. The church smelled faintly of lilies and candle wax, the kind of scent that clung to grief and old wood. Guests murmured softly, some dabbing at their eyes, others whispering gossip into gloved hands. I sat in the front pew, hands folded, my black dress plain and dignified. My chest arched, not just from losing my mother, but from knowing how complicated her love had always been, divided between her daughters, with me always cast as the shadow to my sister's sparkle. The doors creaked open, and there she was, my sister. 6 years had passed since the day she stole my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry, the future I was supposed to build. She walked in late, deliberately, like the funeral was her runway. On her hand glinted a diamond ring so large it caught the morning light like a weapon. Her arm was linked with his. My ex-fiancé, my would-be husband, the man she had whispered promises to behind my back, the man who left me days before our wedding for her. The whispers started immediately. Heads turned. She smiled, soaking it in. When she reached me, she didn't offer condolences. Instead, her lips curled into a smirk. "Poor you," she said, her voice pitched just loud enough for nearby mourners to hear. "Still alone at 38? I got the man, the money, and the mansion." The diamond sparkled as she lifted her hand as though she were presenting proof of her victory. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt the corner of my mouth lift into the faintest smile. I turned to her, calm as stone, and asked, "Have you met my husband yet?" The room fell silent. Guests shifted in their seats, sensing something electric in the air. My sister blinked, her smirk faltering just as I raised my hand to beckon someone forward from the aisle. And when he stepped into view, her face went pale. Because my husband was not who she expected. 6 years earlier, the memory was still sharp as glass. Back then, I was 32, full of plans, full of trust. The wedding invitations had already been sent. My dress hung waiting in the closet, delicate lace and hope stitched into every seam. He was my fiancé, the man I believed I would grow old with, the man my mother had said was the perfect match. And then came the betrayal. It started with whispers. My sister, always the dazzling one, always craving attention, had been helping with the wedding planning. She lingered too close, laughed too loudly at his jokes. My friends warned me, but I brushed it off. She was my sister, family. Surely she wouldn't. Until one night, I came home earlier than expected. I walked in on them in the kitchen, voices low, hands too close, the guilty silence louder than a scream. 3 days later, he broke off the engagement. 2 weeks later, he was on her arm at a gala. 6 months later, she wore my ring, the same diamond he once slid onto my finger, flaunting it as if she'd earned it. The humiliation was merciless. Family whispers painted me as the bitter one, while they toasted her as the victor. My mother, desperate to avoid scandal, smoothed it over. "At least he stayed in the family," she'd said, as if my pain was just a minor inconvenience. I left quietly after that. I rebuilt my life piece by piece, far from their eyes. But grief has a way of calling us back. And now, here at my mother's funeral, the past stood before me in flesh and blood, smirking, flaunting, mocking. Only this time, I wasn't the broken woman they remembered. Because when I turned and said, "Have you met my husband yet?" I wasn't bluffing. The reveal on the porch of grief. The churchyard was quiet, the mourners trickling out, their hushed voices carried away by the autumn breeze. My sister, standing there in her designer black dress, still clung to my ex-fiancé's arm like a trophy. Her diamond ring caught the sun, a cruel reminder of what had been stolen. "Poor you," she said again, twisting the knife. "Still alone at 38. I got the man, the money, and the mansion. Guest life really does pick favorites." But I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled slowly, deliberately. "Have you met my husband yet?" Her laughter stuttered to a halt. My ex-fiancé's smug face tightened, confusion flickering in his eyes. A ripple of curiosity spread among the relatives who had gathered nearby, leaning in to catch every word. I turned slightly and gestured. From the back of the crowd, a tall figure stepped forward. His presence was magnetic, broad shoulders, calm confidence, and the kind of authority that made people instinctively step aside. When my sister saw him, her face drained of color. The air seemed to freeze because this wasn't just any man. It was the one person she never expected to see standing at my side. The man she couldn't escape. The crowd parted as he walked closer. My husband. Not just anyone. Not some faceless name. It was Richard Hale. The very man who once bankrolled my sister's every whim. The same man she had humiliated at charity galas, discarded after milking his wealth, and mocked as too boring for a woman like me. Except Richard wasn't broke, as she once bragged after leaving him. He hadn't collapsed without her. He had risen higher. He had rebuilt his empire, expanded it. And now his name carried weight across every boardroom and social circle she desperately longed to re-enter. And he was my husband. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The diamond ring on her finger suddenly looked smaller, duller, compared to the life Richard now represented. Richard slipped his hand gently into mine, his eyes never leaving my sister's pale face. "I believe we've met," he said evenly, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Gasps spread through the crowd. My ex-fiancé shifted uncomfortably beside her, realizing just how much power had shifted in that single moment. I turned to my sister and smiled, the same smile she once mocked as weak. "Funny thing about stealing someone's fiancé," I said softly. "You never really know what's waiting down the road." Her face crumbled. For the first time, she looked small, cornered, defeated. Because she hadn't just lost control of the moment. She had lost the game she thought she'd won 6 years ago. The tables turned. The silence in the room was suffocating. Whispers rippled through the mourners, each one like a dagger aimed at my sister's pride. Her smirk had crumbled, replaced by the first twitch of panic. She clutched her husband's arm like a lifeline, but he looked just as unsettled, sweat glistening at his temples. Richard didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone tilted the balance of the entire room. "I never forget those who humiliate me," he said calmly. "But I also never forget those who stand by me." The meaning was clear. My sister had discarded him for what she thought was a richer prize, and now she was exposed. The man she betrayed had returned, not ruined, but stronger and married to me. The crowd was buzzing now. "Isn't that Richard Hale? Didn't she humiliate him years ago? And now her sister's his wife. My God, she looks like she's seen a ghost." My sister's face drained of all color. For years, she had wielded her victory, my stolen fiancé, the money, the mansion, like a weapon against me. And now, in one devastating moment, it was stripped away. I leaned closer to her, my voice soft, but sharp enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You thought you destroyed me, but all you did was free me to find someone who truly values me. Look at you now, clinging to a man who pales next to the one you threw away." Her lips trembled. Her diamond ring suddenly felt like a shackle instead of a crown. And in that instant, she wasn't the victor anymore. She was the punchline. The room was still buzzing when I stepped back, letting Richard take center stage. He didn't need to raise his voice. Every eye, every ear was locked on him. "My wife," Richard said, placing his hand on mine, "is the only person who stood by me when I was torn apart years ago. She believed in me when I was at my lowest. Everything I've built since then, everything I am today is because of her faith in me." Gasps rippled through the room. My sister staggered back as though the words had struck her. Her husband, the man she'd flaunted like a trophy, shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, it dawned on him. He wasn't standing beside a queen. He was standing beside a woman whose mask was crumbling in front of everyone. I turned to my sister, voice sharp but calm. "You said you won. You said I was alone, forgotten, unwanted. Look at me now. Look at what I became without you. And look at yourself, desperate enough to gloat at our mother's funeral. You didn't win, sister. You lost everything that mattered." The whispers turned to open judgment now. Cousins who once adored her shook their heads. Old family friends avoided her gaze. Her arrogance had fed her for years. Now it was eating her alive. Her diamond ring, the one she had waved like a crown, trembled on her finger as she clutched her husband's arm, but even he pulled away slightly. Shame etched across his face. Richard looked at her once, then dismissed her with a single line that silenced the room. "Some betrayals can never be undone, and some crowns are nothing but cheap glass." Her knees buckled. Her laughter, once so loud and cruel, was gone. And just like that, at our mother's funeral, the family that once mocked me watched her legacy burn, while mine stood stronger than ever. The aftermath. The funeral ended, but the storm it unleashed didn't. By the next morning, Whispers had spread across town. What people remembered most wasn't my mother's life. It was the spectacle my sister made of herself. Diamond ring, stolen fiancé, humiliated in public. The phrases echoed through the grocery aisles, cafes, and church pews. Her reputation, once polished like her jewels, was cracking. Invitations stopped arriving. Her so-called friends, the ones who loved her arrogance when it was backed by wealth, suddenly avoided her. No one wanted to stand next to a woman who had turned a funeral into a stage for her vanity, only to be exposed in front of everyone. At charity events, she had been the star. Now, she wasn't even on the guest list. The spotlight she craved had moved to me because word spread quickly about Richard, about how he was everything her husband pretended to be. But humiliation wasn't the only price. Richard's quiet team of attorneys and accountants began peeling back layers of her husband's finances. The mansion they flaunted mortgaged to the hilt. The businesses he boasted about, propped up by loans that were already defaulting. Rumors of bankruptcy swirled. Creditors circled. And suddenly the diamond ring she flashed so proudly felt less like a crown and more like a shackle tightening on her finger. Even within the family, support dried up. Cousins who once fawned over her called me privately, ashamed they had ever taken her side. An uncle who had always avoided drama finally said it aloud at Sunday lunch. She betrayed blood for money. And money doesn't last for once. No one defended her, not even Mom's oldest friends. Meanwhile, Richard and I grew stronger. Together, we hosted a memorial scholarship in Mom's name, honoring her legacy in a way that cast a bright contrast between dignity and disgrace. Newspapers ran features on our contributions. My name, once overshadowed by whispers of betrayal, now stood proudly in print. The world had shifted. My sister hadn't just lost her victory lap, she'd lost the very stage. And she didn't even know yet that her greatest humiliation was still ahead. The breaking point. It didn't take long before the cracks widened into chasms. Her husband's creditors came knocking, literally. Cars once parked proudly in their driveway were repossessed. The mansion she flaunted so arrogantly went dark after the bank moved toward foreclosure. Behind closed doors, their marriage had become a battlefield. Neighbors whispered about screaming matches, about glass breaking in the night, about her husband storming out for days at a time. And the diamond ring she once flashed at me, pawned quietly. Word of their downfall spread like wildfire. The very same people who laughed at her joke at the barbecue now crossed the street to avoid her. Once invited to high society galas, she was now whispered about at grocery store aisles. She stole her sister's fiancé for this. All that arrogance, gone in a year. The humiliation cut deeper than any debt. And then came the inevitable. It was late evening when I heard the knock on our door. Richard was upstairs, and I almost ignored it. But curiosity won. When I opened the door, there she was. No jewels, no designer clothes, just hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, and trembling hands. "Please," she whispered, her voice hollow. "You have to help me. We've lost everything. He's leaving me. I don't know where else to go." For the first time, she didn't look like my rival. She looked like the scared little sister I once protected before she betrayed me. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I didn't even step aside. I looked her in the eye and said softly, "You had everything. And you chose to take what wasn't yours. Now you've learned the truth. Greed only leaves you empty. I warned you the day you laughed at me. And now you're living the punchline." Her lip trembled. She tried to speak, but no words came. Richard stepped behind me, his presence calm and firm. "This isn't your home," he said. "And it never will be." I closed the door. As the echo of her footsteps faded down the driveway, I realized something. Revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about letting her destroy herself. With the choices she made, with the arrogance she clung to, and now she wasn't just forgotten, she was finished. The legacy of choices. 1 year later, the anniversary of my mother's funeral arrived quietly, almost forgotten in the rhythm of my new life. Richard and I were thriving, our careers stronger than ever, our home warm and filled with laughter. The void my sister left behind wasn't one of loss. It was one of peace. On the mantel sat a framed photo of my grandparents, smiling as though they'd always known I'd find my way back to happiness. And beside it, a new addition, a sonogram. Proof that Richard and I were about to begin the next chapter of our family. That afternoon, while Richard and I walked hand in hand through the farmer's market, I spotted her. My sister, once draped in jewels, now hunched in a thrift store coat, pushing a cart filled with discounted groceries. The man she stole from me, gone. She was alone. Her eyes, once sharp with cruelty, darted nervously as if life itself was chasing her down. She saw me, saw Richard kiss my temple, saw the glow of the life we'd built. For a split second, her face softened, maybe even pleaded, but no words came. I didn't stop. I didn't gloat. I didn't even speak because she already knew. Every diamond she flaunted, every cruel word she wielded, every smug smirk at my expense had crumbled into dust, and the mansion, the money, the man, all gone. What remained was silence, and silence this time wasn't mine. It was hers, the closing line. As Richard and I walked away, my hand resting gently over the child we would soon welcome, I whispered to myself. She thought stealing my future would ruin me. But all she stole was her own. Because revenge isn't always about taking back what was lost, sometimes the sweetest revenge is living the life they swore you never would, while they fade into the shadows of their own betrayal. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below. I read every single one. Hit like if you crave justice and share this story with someone who needs its fire. Follow and subscribe to Daily Scroll Stories. Because here, betrayals don't sleep. They hunt their owners. Every shadow hides a reckoning. Every mask breaks. And every betrayal is answered. Stay sharp. Stay unbroken. Stay tuned.